a link in the group break. The new link.
Yeah, I updated it already.
Okay, we live now, right?
Yep.
Yes, we are.
All right, welcome everyone today to another Bahamas Free Thinkers Google Hangout. Today is Sunday, the 14th of June, 2015. Today we're going to be discussing how do you get started on a new society if you had the chance to hit the reset button. All right, our panelists today, Anthony, you got to pronounce your last name.
Motivate.
Motivate, and I have Marcus, Dean, and Condra, you and that's right.
Yep.
Okay, Condra says. All right. So before we get started, we're going to give everybody a chance just to say a little bit about themselves and move on from there. So start from left to right on my screen. Go ahead, Anthony.
My name's Anthony Marve. Live in the Netherlands. Half Bahamian, half Dutch. Everyone knows me as the sort of the resident economist. I like to leave it at that, and I'll give Marcus the floor.
Marcus, Dean, Damien, live in Nassau. I guess most people who are watching already seen one of my posts time to time, so I guess you know my general. Yeah, so just keep it brief like that. Yeah.
All right, Condra.
And I think most people, well, I'm Condra, one of the BFT admins. I am a Bahamian living and working in Baltimore, Maryland, and I'm a microbiologist. I guess that's pretty much it.
Got that one in there. All right.
I'm.
Thank you, guys. And let's get started. We have the chance to reset society. We're talking about the Bahamas. And we're given the power to start from the ground up. What is the first thing you get started on? Let's start with Anthony. Anthony's still there, did it freeze?
Might have frozen.
It might have. All right, let's go to Condra until Anthony gets sorted out.
What's the first thing? That's a pretty broad question. I mean, I think sort of the premise.
We're not talking about setting up communities and whatnot. You know.
Right. I guess what's the most important thing now that we're sort of the interim?
What would you focus on first?
I guess safety and maintaining public safety would probably be the first concern, because obviously something traumatic would have happened for us to sort of be having to step in and run the show. So how do we go about reassuring people that the country won't go to shit, and that services are going to continue as they did before, at least as well as they did before, in the interim, and sort of, I guess there would have to be coalition building. How do you go about and do that? Bring.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hey, Anthony.
Sorry about that, guys. The Dutch weather is apparently subtropical now.
Go ahead, Gondra.
Yeah. So how do you go about bringing in people who might not share our philosophy, and how we do things, or how we would like to do things? So how do you sort of calm those waters? Because you're not really going to be able to do any of that until you sort of have, not necessarily consensus, but at least build some relationships to say, hey, we need to move forward, and we need people to be working with us, and not actively.
Before you even do all that, you need to get the weapons and guns first. Because who else the muscle gets to make the rules? So, if you want to be territory or people, you gotta have the upper hand. The rules are saying that somebody else is kind of swoop in and push you out of power. Nobody will try to do all this stuff. So before
Mm.
anything gets done, you have to make sure you have the guns and the power first, like the raw power.
Well, Marcus, you're bringing up a very interesting point. You're actually highlighting Hobbes's arguments for the state as a mechanism for monopoly coercive power. There's a really interesting game that is played out in that theory. It says that it's better that one person has a gun and everyone else has knives than everyone having a gun and one person has a knife. Something along those lines. But the core idea is that the primary function of the state is to ensure that everybody has the ability to exercise their individual rights without violating anyone else's rights. So even if you're the most ardent libertarian, you still agree that you're willing to sacrifice that little bit of liberty towards this concentrated power entity to make sure that everyone in society is able to exercise their ability to be a citizen.
All right. So that's a good point. I guess thinking about security, because if we've seen anything with the recent all the recent issues in statewide in the U.S., once one little thing goes wrong, everybody starts losing their minds. Right. So ensuring that you are able to build a proper society first, without someone constantly working against you, ripping it down. Good start. So, Anthony, after you've solidified, or, well, reasonably enough, that you have a government in charge or an organization in charge to get this started, where else do you go from there?
Well, from my experience, and this is also something we spoke about last night, is sort of the inflection, looking back at history to see what has been the evolution of society, and if we go back, it's been this dualism between the state and the church, and either entity kind of functioned separately within their responsibilities until the later 19th century, when we actually saw the formation of the nation state and then the welfare state. And that's, I think, where I would like to jump off, is that if we are able to restart and look at, based off of what we know now about how society is ordered and why we develop certain institutions, putting faith aside, I think we would want to capture those elements of of what religious orders had done, but through the state. So basically skipping a step. So ensuring that we have adequate education, welfare, and health provision, so that crazy people don't have to get in on the game. You know?
So your next step would be to make a clear separation between church and state.
Sort of, well, yeah, of course. I mean, but not just church. I mean, any sort of ideology, you'd want to protect someone's liberty, so you would want to frame a legal constitution to protect people from the majority. That's actually what you're protecting people from, because to have some sort of legal framework to protect against populism, what I would say would be the next legal step you want to take, probably.
All right. Well, as you know, very recently there's our neighbors to the west that had that opportunity a few years ago to start a whole new society, and they drafted their constitution that was pretty much a secular constitution, and they tried to do exactly that. A few hundred years later, it hasn't seemed to work out that well. So, touching on the education aspect, y'all already jumped into the religious part. I was trying to save the good part for last. But Marcus, what else would you do?
Hey Dale, guys, I just got some feedback that the YouTube link wasn't live, so if you could just sort of repeat what you said, Anthony, so people can, because that's where we sort of really saw going.
From which point would you like me to start?
I was not paying attention because I was trying to figure things out. But,
Okay.
What do you want us to do, Gandhi?
we'd already moved past security, so past that point.
Just give me a sort of an idea. From where would I start? Talking about the function of the state or the function of a constitution, or
The function of the state and how some people you sort of give up some liberties.
oh, okay.
So everybody.
Yeah, the Hobbesian experiment. I'll give a brief description of that. So back in the early 18th centuries and 19th century, there was the post-Enlightenment sort of reaction towards society and this idea of the state and how power is concentrated and how it should be ordered. And the thought experiment that we all know from Rousseau and Hobbes is that the state is a reaction to the state of nature. So if man is let alone to be free to do what he wants, you would have the natural process by which stronger groups or stronger people would overpower weaker people, given equal technology. And that would be a pretty grim situation. So to create some sort of stability whereby every individual has the ability to access and participate in society without the fear of harm or coercion, the state acts as a monopoly on power, so that no one single individual can take advantage of take advantage of others, and that is the fundamental thing. So the initial point is my rights are protected so long I can do what I want so long as I don't harm someone else. So the harm principle. And that is the primary function of the state, to ensure our ability to exercise our fundamental rights, to have agency over our decisions.
Okay. Marcus. Anything else to add?
You're talking about to that particular point. Yeah, I pretty much agree with what you were saying. Like you said, what that point about the state, one who needs the muscle. But you were saying something about the education. Like, what would be the educational goals? That would be education is basically what the state uses in order to determine out the type of citizens that they want to make up their society. In this society, we need more practical thinkers, pragmatism. I guess not necessarily force people to give up their religion or anything like that, but would inculcate a sense of from where people are growing up, how to think strategically, pragmatically, and kind of like ease off the magical thinking, because it can't exactly just properly like that, but just show them more the benefit in all aspects, that no idea is sacred, basically. Yes, we do have a lot of pragmatic people over here, but they tend to compartmentalize. There are certain pragmatic situations from, I guess, their logical ideas, like, and that's where you get the whole notion of having sacred ideas. But I think that in this new society, we should impart that no idea is sacred. Everything can be challenged. That,
may I interject there for a moment?
all right.
I think what you're talking about is a consequentialist aspect. Like, from at least looking at it from a historic perspective, the rise of skepticism and the rise of critical thinking has, in most part, from what I've observed, been the consequence of having good education policy. So rather than making it the aim to have a particular type of person, focusing on the quality and on the how well we are able to translate critical thinking skills and cognitive development into children and adults I think would be a more organic way to achieve the same exact goals that you're talking about, Marcus. Where because from what I've at least observed, it's extraordinarily difficult to, especially later on in life, is to convince someone or to teach someone how to approach these sorts of thought problems in a more critical way. So I think if we're going to start over, our focus of society should be geared towards how we deal with our children and this type of education we give them from when they're young. Right. I would say if there was a law that Saturday and Sunday were not free days, but we reduced the weekly hours across the board, so kids are in school less hours per week, but they're in school every day of the week. So as to sort of counteract the influence of dogma and mythology and stuff, so that there's more time and space to sort of rationalize these mystical ideas for what they are. But it's the Bahamas. What do you want to do?
How would you accommodate people who would want to? Because people are going to want to be exempt from. If a kid misses a certain amount of certain number of days in school, there are repercussions for that. So how do you compromise with people who's been extending the number of days, reducing the hours, but extending the days is unfair to people who are religious. Their religion.
But this is sort of what I'm trying to understand. Are we speaking from the Bahamian point of view, or are we speaking from the ideal state point of view? Because from the Bahamian point of view, my argument would be, well, productivity-wise, kids at after lunch, after 2 o'clock, they're useless. So maybe we can get more out of our kids. So more of a utilitarian approach towards selling it towards parents. But at the same time, I think from the intelligentsia government side, we should be instilling an idea of religious liberty anyway. So I find it bizarre, if we're talking from the Bahamian perspective, that there isn't a strong push towards religious freedom. It seems to be more of a push towards religious discrimination. And if we were in control, I mean, those sorts of things are cultural and they tend to change very slowly.
Right.
Okay, guys. So it's a bit radical, but at the same time, you still have to think about the teachers working every day.
But less.
But less. But that's the idea. As I said before, just the thought of them working every day. Doesn't really matter the amount of hours. That's the one thing that's going to stick. And then we're talking about the hymn at the same time. So, what about private schools and paid for education at the start? Would private entities still be allowed to structure their own system if they want it?
Well, I could tell you that the research material on it doesn't work. The free school system, the voucher system, the state funding private institution system, the only real effects is that it creates a sort of a meritocratic inequality system, which drives it excels students, but a very small minority, and it creates a lot of social discohesion. My take is that, and this goes back to this whole, where do we go from the night watchman state? So when we've got this idea of the state as enforcer of power and the protector of rights, but then we go on to the next step, and that is, well, essentially what the state is doing when it's protecting people from excessive power is that it's an insurance against circumstances. It's an insurance against the circumstance that someone has more power by chance than you. But if you take that argument to its logical conclusion, there are a lot of circumstances and a lot of chance in how we arrive on the planet, which have very little to do with our choices. And I think if we want to figure out the ideal state, we need to figure out the balance between things which are the consequence of one's own agency and free will and choice, and those things which are the product of circumstance. And policy should fall somewhere between those, in my opinion.
Okay. Anyone else?
No.
Margaret?
Oh. Um. What about what about trade? International trade. What do you think be ideally? Do you think the model we have now is working? Or, I mean, it's working for a few people. But do you think ideally, if it was distributed evenly, it could work? Like, how would you develop other islands if we're talking about the Bahamas? So would you like, especially to Grand Bahama, uh, but it's still into like a international hub of they don't have to shipping areas. Shipping areas is already the Dana Port and all that stuff to that shit. Like, I could see
Yeah.
I could see like Freeport doing like a manufacturing hub of the Bahamas, basically.
Yeah, ad hoc, exposed manufacturing. But I think this is all interrelated, and the point you bring up about trademark is actually, in my view, is kind of where you could see it function, because this is also kind of my specialty of an area in economics is development. But what we know is that you do not create sustainable growth by focusing wholly and solely on one or two industries. We know this is called the dual economy problem. We see all the problems that come from it. The geographic distribution of power in the Bahamas, if we're totally talking about the Bahamas itself, is where we need to start. And this is where the push for a federal Bahamas comes into play, where local government has more ability to direct its fiscal policy and arrange incentives for international business, as well as immigration policy being more localized, so that the country, at least in the periphery, would be more flexible in how it approaches foreign enterprises. So it doesn't have to go through all the red tape of, say, for example, if Exuma wants to build a science park, and they have to go through the process of getting the work permits for academics, scientists, technicians, etc., labs assistants. We know from our experience dealing with Nassau how slow and inefficient that would be. But if we can disseminate those sorts of powers, as the Freeport model has, but I would say push it a degree further. Don't just allow local fiscal policy to be set to a degree. You still want some sort of federal funding going on, but also allow immigration, education, policy to be locally determined, with the appropriate links between the center and the periphery. Essentially, that's what Freeport already has done. I mean, the big limiting factor in Freeport has been lack of regulation of the energy monopoly and the insufficient allowance for foreign labor. Of course, the counter-argument to that is, those foreigners taking the jobs, blah, 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 blah. Even though for every one foreign worker in Freeport, 3 local jobs are created. But no one wants to talk about that. Yeah, I would say the trade idea, and to create that sort of hub and spoke federal model in the Bahamas, they said that detach power, give it up, give it over to the local authorities.
All right.
Sorry?
All right. Annie, you mentioned immigration. You know, that's a hot topic in the Bahamas nowadays. Would you make, this is for anybody out there, what changes would you make to immigration policy?
Well, it's very brief, actually, from my side on it. You'd have to have a long-run vision of it. I think right now, when we look at policy in the Bahamas, or policy in most places, they have very short-term perspective on it, and they don't take into account demographics. Maybe I'm talking about it very cold and rationally, because I don't care who mixes and how it mingles. I'm a product of mixing and mingling, so I'm not very partial to that. I'm not very partial to that. So put incentives in place for high-skilled labor, of course, because that drives your economy through knowledge spillovers and clustering. So that's actually what I missed to say, is that if you want to develop an economy, it's not about finding comparative advantages. That's a myth. That's not how it works. It works when you can find clusters, when you can link a container port to a shipyard, to a petrochemical plant, to a schooling system, to a healthcare system. When you can make those sorts of institutional links, that's where you find growth, rapid growth, or sustained rapid growth. And from that, you need an open door policy to very specialized labor, because we can only produce so much of it ourselves. And I always hear the argument, well, we have these skilled people. Well, we don't have enough of them. That's the problem. You need critical masses of certain skilled labor supply, to get that investment pulled towards it. That's why Silicon Valley and Mumbai and Israel have those investment streams going towards it. It's because they have critical masses of software engineers and computer engineers and mathematicians, etc. So I think we need to understand that, for one. And then on the other side, we have the low-skilled labor problem with Haitians and Filipinos and Romanians or whatever. And that comes, I think, on two sides. On one side, we need to push more vocational education. That's a very important part of any labor market, is being able to stream people that are not going to university into vocational training. That is also directly linked to apprenticeships and certain firms that are already there. And on the other side, and I say this with a lot of confidence, is that we need to find more regional cooperation to deal with the Haitian influx, because without developing their economy, or without us finding opportunities to generate growth there, we're not going to stop it. I mean, it's like the both migrants from Africa to Europe. Unless you increase their economic well-being there, you're not going to stop the boats. Yeah. So.
So you're basically saying that we should be helping employers makers in this scenario, so that they be able to more likely to stay. Yeah.
Well, not with money though. That's a big misconception. I mean, yeah, money, but private sector money. Like, people need to take their personal risk of investing in Haiti, for example. The idea is very nuanced, and I use that word too much probably, but it's about building the right institutions, and that's what Haiti has lacked. If we want to talk about Haiti as a source for migrants, it's a country that has systemically lacked proper institutions for a very long time, and without regional cooperation in developing those institutions, I can't really see any sort of development happening in a sustainable way.
All right.
Especially the courts.
On the topic of on the topic of immigration, I've always thought and spoke of creating a program of sorts for the lower income, lower skilled laborers, especially as we have coming from Haiti, where we could set up a program where they would stay here for a limited period of time, make money, go back to at home, put in work there, and then we just kind of cycle in and out groups of people, so that we could stimulate their economy as well as ours, and to give them a practical way of making that move or migrating over, instead of them just all heaping up on boots and taking a risk. Would it make sense to create a program or an initiative where you could move foreigners in and out. So let them become a part of your to contribute to your economy as well as their own.
Well, for me, I think in order to do that, we have to have a proper tax, at least a better tax system, I guess. It's similar to how it is in the States, where if you buy anything, there's a little tax. I mean, it's some of what we're doing now, I guess, but because if people come in here, you also have to deal with the problem of them hoarding their money, and
Hello?
yeah,
Okay, cool.
like I say, because we still have to deal with the problem of people coming here working and hoarding up their money and sending most of it back where they're from, and hardly any of it's like circulation local in our economy. So we have to deal with that in order to like mitigate that happening. For your idea to work, in my opinion.
Well, me and Justin have spoken on that topic for quite some time now, and we actually are speculating, or I think we're pretty confident saying that as it goes for foreign workers in the Bahamas, they tend to spend more of their income locally because they're outside of the formal residency system. So they're incapable, or they can, but to a lesser extent, go abroad and spend their dollars abroad. They really patronize local enterprise. But to go back to Dale's point on this sort of free trade zone funnel system, the only problem I would say with that is that you still have to factor in that these are people with families, and what we know from the literature is that individuals who have a connection to where they are contribute the most. So transitory workers, I mean, they do add some benefit, but the greatest benefit that you can get is from an integrated settled family unit. So I would say I agree, it's a good idea to some extent, because it might just profit some people, and without good regulation you might have a lot of labor violations that would have to be prevented, because there's a high tendency to take advantage of those sorts of people in those sorts of desperate situations. So under the right protections, I could see a sort of entrepot, what they used to call entrepot. So you manufacture something here with some people working there, and then you re-export it. And then have a sort of I would say have how can you say it, a ladder system. So if you are in that system, you cycle in from Haiti and you work here, and you're able to accumulate some savings or whatever. And depending on how well you move up, how hard you work, how well you improve yourself, by what degree you show that you're taking advantage of the opportunity, I would say have policies in place to let those people then move into a longer-term allowance of staying, because I'll be honest, we need the people. Like, we have a serious demographic problem coming.
Right.
I have a question. What was your thing about some sort of a mandatory national service, like especially from a certain age, I guess from 12 up, as a sort of mandatory national service, irrespective of, I guess, what class you belong to or where which area you're from. And everybody's mandated to do sort of military-esque service, like, there's so-called said Finland was trying to do the first, but what do you think of something like that as a way of creating cultural cohesion and sort of, I guess, love for the country, you could say?
Well, more than cultural cohesion, I would say economic cohesion, because socioeconomic cohesion, because I don't know, this isn't well published, but the Bahamas has a Gini, or an inequality measure, that hangs somewhere around Honduras. So we're a very, very, very unequal place. A lot of that comes through wealthy expats that live here, but the distance between lower and upper income is extremely high. And like you said yesterday, Marcus, I think that sort of system of the sort of pseudo-feudal system that we exist in, I think is a big source of discohesion, that you have the private versus the public school. I mean, personally, I would say make it all public and just fund it properly, and tie that into national service, so that you do have, like you said, the bridging of classes and cultures.
Okay.
But how do you, since we're talking about, we're rebuilding a new society, how do you sort of properly implement that? So people who have the resources to bypass the system don't bypass the system. Because that's typically what happens, is that only the people who don't have the resources to get an exemption or leave the country or do anything else. How do you sort of ensure that, if you say everybody between the ages of 15 and 18 are required to do national service, how, what does that national service system look like? And then how do we ensure that as many people as possible from all backgrounds are involved in that system? And that's sort of, we can say, okay, we're in favor of implementing it, but then how do we go about that? How do we ensure that there's full participation? Because it won't work if it's still just a little economic groups that participate.
Well, that would only make it worse, as we saw in the U.S. during the Vietnam draft. I would say we could look at Singapore, but we can learn from it, but not copy it. How Singapore did it, and it's not super complex on how they did it. They basically they made sure that their society had a very strong rule of law, and I think any society that you want to start over with needs to have a very strong rule of law, not an oppressive rule of law like Singapore has, or an authority.
Okay, we have a couple of questions from.
Yeah, I can hear you.
We have a couple of questions from our viewers, and I'm not surprised that this is the first one. So, who's going to set up the first strip club in our society?
Who's going to set up the first strip club?
Yeah.
I think Dale is going to do that. I thought that was covered. Sorry?
Will strip clubs be legal?
That's an interesting question. I would say it depends on how feminist our society is. Because prostitution. Oh, I actually wrote a paper on that. It should be legal if you have a strong welfare state.
Okay.
Work if you have a strong welfare state with good protections, because prostitutes get old and depreciate, and then they get into problems with poverty and drug use. So
speaking of drugs, what about drugs? If you legalize all drugs, there still be a penalty. But
I think drugs should be treated like a medical condition.
I think all drugs should be legalized. More focus on rehabilitation. I think quality of life also affects drug abuse, because not necessarily chemicals themselves, because a lot of the same drugs they use in hospitals, and a lot of people don't get addicted to that, because then it's a completely different situation. But if you're in a depressive state or a depressed society, that's why you have a lot of alcoholics as well. It's basically the same thing.
When you say
science sort of showing now is that the environment makes more of a difference when it comes to addiction, and people who have stronger social networks and safety nets are less likely to become addicted. So, similarly, if you legalize prostitution, if you have a strong welfare system, I think you'd also expect to see drug addiction in this case, because people will be less likely to try it and less likely to become addicted, because their lives are taken care of.
Yeah, 'cause I don't think locking people up for putting something inside their body makes any sense. And
We should.
it just creates a bigger criminal culture, because especially how it is now, it's very unforgiving for the jails for joint and how to get a job, or how to travel. So you have to basically to start over. You have to break that type of thinking that someone ought to be punished because they're trying a drug, as opposed to finding why they're trying or why
But
they're.
that's a very. Sorry.
So if you want to build a better society, you just have to shift that type of thinking to another way.
It's a very it's a very
Sorry.
yeah, it's a very Christian dogmatic perspective to penalize people for bad behavior. We should create. We should be first of all. We need to separate, in my view, drug use as a means of coping with mental illness. So have a good mental health provision as a part of a good healthcare system. And on the other side, we need to recognize, disincentivize certain bad behavior. So, and that market does that pretty well. I mean, the main reason why cigarette use has gone down is through taxes on cigarettes in Europe. It's just too expensive. In the same way, if we can manage the problem rather than trying to stomp out the problem. And that's, I think, the thing. We transition, from these various systems. So from a very punitive system, we move to a treatment system, to a disincentivizing system.
Yeah, to add to that, because I was thinking about yesterday that if we want to fund the healthcare system in order to deal with people who abuse substances and stuff like that, if it's illegal, we could put an extra tax on it, let's say alcohol, cigarettes, drugs, even fast food. Because of the hypertension, a lot of people abuse fast food and get hypertension, heart attacks, and in order to avoid overburdening the healthcare system, in that case, just put an extra tax on these different substances that can lead to health detriments down the line if you keep using them. So that way, even if you do end up going to the hospital because you overdose or does you have heart problems from drinking alcohol too much, it'll be enough money in order to offset that. So the healthcare system is like how it is now.
Well, there's a lot of technical changes that should be made to the healthcare policies as well. I mean, first of all, they're treating health. I mean, let's not comment on how they're doing it, but health reform should include dietary reform as well. How we approach our diets and our exercise and that sort of thing should also be a component of a healthcare system. It shouldn't just be how do you call that, after the fact, just after something goes wrong. It should be can't think of the word. Care before. Sorry.
It shouldn't be catastrophic care.
Yeah. So if we're looking at health policy in a total view, I think it includes mental health. It includes programs that focus on dietary. What is the quality of the food in our country? Where is it coming from, etc. Food quality standards, better programs for childhood, what do you call that, physical education. That's where the money should go if you want to see results, because human capital, and this is just talking from what I know, is not just comprised of education. It's also comprised of your health, your ability to function, your ability to be productive. It plays a lot into it. So if we want to be a well-off society or a prosperous society, we have to take both our total health and our mental health seriously as well.
Okay.
To be clear, we're not talking about like banning. What did they ban here?
Wendy's.
Oh gosh, what's the fact? Not like banning trans fats or banning particular foods. I guess I think what we're saying is to sort of make it easier for people to make
Better choices.
healthier decisions, or make better choices.
That's part of where the extra tax comes from too. Disincentivizes to keep buying a bunch of garbage over and over. It can make it more expensive.
But it would only be progressive if you then put that money into programs that help to lower the cost of healthier foods as well. Otherwise, you're just transferring money to away from poor people.
The problem is that the less healthy foods are heavily subsidized. That's why upfront the cost is cheaper.
In the Bahamas, a soda should not cost $1.
You lucky you find a soda for $1 around here.
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot inflation of that. Anyway, that was back in the day.
I got a question from one of our viewers. It says that earlier, were you making a argument for a fully open economy? When you were talking about investment and all that stuff.
No, I would never recommend going the cowboy route. The cowboy route being a fully open, fully unregulated. No, it's Right there. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Yeah. I would say open to the extent that you have the regulation to match it. So if you're going to be involved in global trade, for example, it has to be a gradual process by which you build up the right sorts of institutions to deal with the negative consequences of it. Because you're going to face unemployment, you're going to face upset people. You might face worse quality products or better quality products. So you need to have these checks in place at the border and within your society to deal with it. So it's not a free for all. Let the animal forces be. That's the worst thing you can do. It's a slow process because I'll give one example. The Asian financial crisis in 1997 was basically caused by the fact that opening up happened faster than institutions were able to react to it. So technology, financial sophistication, that all happened really quickly and really rapidly, but the legal and the actual procedural, institutional things that make things happen on a day-to-day basis were still like 10 years older than what was happening on the day-to-day financial transactions area. So make sure. My thing is open up when you have open up with the right institutions. That's basically that. Yeah.
Okay, I got another question. This one's from It said, how far will this new society go in protecting civil liberties as opposed to prohibiting vices?
Define vice.
I think we addressed that somewhat. I mean,
we kind of touched on one or two of them.
Very keen on prohibiting vices because that doesn't really work. So I guess our strategy is more you support people should they decide to be more supportive as opposed to oppressive, and penalizing people for doing what they want to do.
Embracing human nature rather than pretending like it doesn't exist. Because anything you prohibit will get pushed on the ground to a very detrimental extent.
Yeah.
Okay. I have one more question here so far, and then we could move on to another topic. Do you think that the average Bahamian can handle a society with free money and welfare? This one's from Flower Child.
Free money?
Yeah.
Or define free money? They never heard of free money.
I don't know.
I think that's what it boils down to in our psyche, right? If you're not working or if you have a disability and you need some sort of support from the state, people or the current perception that's free money. Like you didn't do anything to earn it. Never mind that you've been contributing to that society, you know, prior to your, or even if you haven't, even if you're you've been unable to work because of congenital problem. We sort of, that's our attitude. If we can't see somebody actively contributing to society, then we don't think they should be able to benefit from it or be supported by it. So how do we think? I mean, I don't think that Bahamians are ready for it. You already hear talk of, you know, the burden that immigrants are on our education system and our health system. So I think, how do we sort of change that perception of what welfare means, so that people don't think of it as free money, but something that they have earned by virtue of being a citizen who has contributed in some way.
Well, I think it goes beyond contribution. I mean, I think, well, if we look at the problem as far as Bahamian society goes, I think it's a dual problem. So on one hand, you have an imported form of individualism, so everyone for themselves, sort of. And on the other side, we fail to see the big picture of things. Like with the immigration thing, for example. It's very hard to translate into the daily mind of people why it's important for us to have a healthy population growth, not a rapid population growth or a slow population, but a good population growth or the adequate level of population growth. And that we, as a country, don't have enough people. Some will say, yeah, but Nassau is overpopulated, but that's a distribution problem. We don't distribute the people through our country very well because of that whole federal incentive thing, that all the incentives are concentrated in Nassau. But I think once we move away from the situation where everything and everyone is concentrated in one place, and we have a wider distribution of people and business and life throughout the archipelago, I think we would be in a different mental state of being as a country, a different zeitgeist, where we could actually start asking the question, well, making sure that people have unemployment insurance that covers their their expenses, or that people have support with childcare, that people have all the different facets of the welfare state, that those are in place as investments in our capacity as a society. And I think until Bahamians are able to talk in that sort of, not jargon, but in that language of doing something now or sacrificing something now for a bigger benefit later, until that point, I don't think we're going to move towards any sort of difference in how people look at it.
Okay, we have one more. We have another question here, based on your talk about changing our diet. From Terrence Bethley says, I always hear people talk about dietary changes. I never hear any concrete suggestions. For the most part, there's public education on healthy living. We do not hear it.
So can I?
So concrete suggestions.
I think in practical terms, so if I compare the way I live here in Baltimore to the way I live when I go to Nassau, it's it's pretty different. Like, I walk everywhere here. I don't own a car, right? Which means, I walk to work, walk to the grocery store. I, take public transportation. You can't do that enough. I mean, people do it, but I don't do it because I never feel safe. There are no sidewalks. Pedestrian crossings. We don't make it easy for people to do things that would help them be healthy. And I think, if we could go in tomorrow, like probably one of the first things I could do is put in sidewalks and bike lanes. So
But
make it,
that would call.
Having to hop into their car or whatever, like just to start to teach the culture to make those options easier. And when we talk about a healthy diet, we import everything, and we don't sort of encourage agriculture of native plants, or you can't go into a grocery store and find sugar apples and sapodillies or stuff like that. So I think we sort of need to slowly change the way people think by giving them more options and encouraging. I don't know sort of how you go about doing that in a practical sense. If you tax imports higher than food, or just give people greater access to local food. But that's, again, I don't know. That's sort of in concrete terms, those changes. Encourage farmers markets, encourage people to grow their own fruits and vegetables, and actively educate them on how to do that.
I think that there are two sides to this argument, and you brought a very interesting point with the public transportation. I only use public transportation on my bike here. And I think what we want to say with that is that we have to rethink urban planning. We want livable cities, livable places to exist. And what we have done in a very small amount of space is emulate the American automobile model, which has its advantages, but also when you do it in a very small, highly dense populated place, very large disadvantages. If we were able to reset policy, I would say we should focus on public transportation first. Buses, light rail, even maybe above ground metro system, or something which facilitates rapid movements of lots of people within this very small amount of space, that is efficient, which is clean, which is on time, which disincentivizes people, and is cheap enough to disincentivize people from jumping into a car, because car ownership is just far too high in the Bahamas for the amount of space and the amount of people. And we see this in the congestion, which decreases air quality, which decreases life quality. We see this in the health effects of not walking enough or not moving enough because we're so inclined to jump on a car and jump in a car. So if we facilitate a redesign of our city, a redesign of our environment with more green space, more facility for biking and walking and public transportation, I think we would see a different attitude. We would also my cultural critic moment is that one of the other side effects of the car culture that we've adopted is individualism. Is like everyone is in their car, in their little box. You don't see other people really. You do sometimes if you go to some communal things, but you don't actively see other people in your daily life, and that's about that urban planning thing. On the other side is the diet thing, and it's a good question from Terrence. I would say stop with the damn double starches. You don't need to eat potato, rice, and macaroni. sorry.
When you think about potatoes, we again, like, do we need to give people new recipes?
It was a joke.
We just don't have a diverse.
Our diet. Well, we have the same problem as the southern U.S. Our diets are based off of what used to be agricultural societies. You worked very long in the sun. You needed a lot of calories. But our diets haven't changed as our society has moved towards a service, a business-oriented society. And I think we could learn something from the Japanese here, because their dietary programs in school are focused on fish, and which I always find bizarre. Like, we, in one respect, we are like Japan. We are a maritime culture. We are a fishing culture, and we used to be. And I think that's what's lost. We should have, and this would encourage a lot of local entrepreneurship, and on the part of local fishermen who have a steady buyer throughout the year. You know, encourage those people who are selling crab on the side of the street, fish on the side of the street. Get that into the daily meals at school. Fish has the oils and the vitamins, not minerals, whatever, that's needed for brain development. So that's one clear change. Is we can encourage better diets by targeting it at the primary school level, by getting fish and maybe a little bit of starch and some vegetables and fruit, local fruits if we can, which would also encourage food production, on the plates of our kids. And that's where I think it should be. And you could also sell that easily, because no one's going to argue against better food for children. Yeah. The asshole who goes against that just committed political suicide. So.
Well, I mean, you look at the argument here in the U.S., right? When Michelle Obama's been pushing this healthy lunches in the schools, and people are like, "Oh, she wants to tell our children what to eat." You will have those assholes. Like, don't tell my children what to eat.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
That's part of the human nature. They will always
well, it's part of something we've adopted from the U.S. We've adopted their stupid not stupid, but we've adopted this perverse individualism. That we don't have a good balance between the social contract, so our priorities and our responsibilities to our society, and to our personal desires. So there's no balance anymore. It's one or the other. And I think that's something that really needs to be looked at again from a public education perspective, like in middle school. Sorry.
So let me ask. Okay, what about incarceration? Would there be any? What change? Would you change it? Pretty much. No if on but what changes would you make? What things would you end immediately? And even as far as a location for a prison. First of all, would you allow a prison to be built? Would there be a prison?
Well, sorry.
Drug incarceration, especially little things like little joints and stuff like that. You get rid of that. Getting arrested for 2 pounds of weed. Not even 2 pounds, 2 ounces. Don't make any sense.
We should just decriminalize marijuana to begin with.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about weed or drug possession. We're talking about the criminal system.
That's what it starts. That's why you have to get rid of it. A lot of people go into the system with these folks on the joint, and then they eventually come out hardened criminals. Maybe not the first time, but as they get out and becomes harder and harder to function, they end up going back to prison. And over time, it's like school. So that you need to break that chain first in order for, I guess, decrease the criminal mentality.
Well, that.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't hear the break. From going, I always joke about going to Fox Hill on my school trips. It was for fun, but I'll never forget the impression I got from going to Her Majesty's prison twice. Is that it's a place that removes hope from people. It's a grim environment. It's a grim place. And it hasn't changed since the colonial period. It still functions effectively as an architectural and as an institutional perspective, from an architectural and institutional perspective, as a place that is meant to remove hope from the people that go there. And if you remove hope from a person, you are not going to give them any sort of incentive to change their behavior or mentality. So I think something, and this might sound radical, but I would issue either a tax or a bond sale to rebuild a new prison that is modern, which incorporates design features that help to de-alienate people. Our system incredibly alienates people and sort of turns them into animals. It looks like a zoo. Yeah. So I would say we should invest in a correctional system, which, like Marcus pointed out, deals with the rehabilitation arm. So we rehabilitate alcoholics and people on heavy drug use, in combination with decriminalization of Class A drugs or light drugs. And then the hardened criminals, we get them into the, Sandilands has a function, but we need to use this space as, it sounds pretty utilitarian, but as a learning environment for our sociology and psychology students, but also as a place to try and rehabilitate these people so that it's functional. It has to have some sort of functionalism, aside from just as a big storage locker where you put these people away until they're ready to go back on the street and rape and kill again.
So they learn so that when they come out, they're employable and they can reintegrate into society, yeah. And so they don't with what's happening.
Well, I from when I remember going there, I know they have inside of Fox Hill, they have the carpentry school, the how you call it, with textile working school, where they repair uniforms and stuff. Well, the men work there, and I've spoken to some inmates. I remember speaking to inmates on this subject, but the problem is that they lack the social ability to adjust to normal society again. And that's even when they're skilled and capable of entering into the labor market. They don't know how to connect with society anymore because we've functionally removed their ability to be humans, in essence, So I think we have to attach a complete revolution to how we physically incarcerate these people and how we treat them while they're incarcerated. Like a bucket in a cell is against human rights. I'm sorry. Even if you are the worst criminal in the world, it's not okay. It's not okay to be in a cell with 10 guys where it's like 5 by 5 or whatever, and a bucket. It's ridiculous. And no, that's inhumane. And if you're going to put people in inhumane conditions, you're going to breed inhumane people.
Exactly. So, I don't understand what's the hard concept to do that. But that's we think, if you commit a crime, you should be cut off from society and put under the fucking jail. So
the problem with the prison now is even to implement a proper, just some as basic as a proper plumbing system, that place was not designed or built that way. So the money and the time and the work and the organization that's going to have to go into putting so much as a toilet in every cell is going to be monumental.
It's not worth it. We should just make it burn it down and cover it with salt. That place is haunted. Just burn it down and cover it with salt.
The cells are very dungeon-like, very little light.
Yeah.
That place is absolutely horrid. And it's a lot of waste on the ground because they built up. Last I heard, they built a lot of brand new buildings that were supposed to be for new schools and training, and the buildings have yet to be touched. They're just sitting there.
Now, that comes back to the fact that our bureaucracies are badly designed as well. So things tend not to come to fruition even when we plan them. And we could see that in BAMSI as well. Like going back to the dietary thing, is that the access and the likelihood that we're going to get a supply of fruits and vegetables that are going to go into the local market and be there for Bahamian consumers, I think is very unlikely because of the failures in our bureaucratic system to translate funds into realities. And it's the same thing with the prison. I mean, honestly, without a good bureaucratic management, without good oversight and accountability and transparency, even if we were to build a new prison, I could see it going up in flames without insurance in the first week.
But no, this is us. We're different. That building is gonna have insurance.
So that really is back to the culture of criminality. There's no accountability even to the top.
Yeah.
So in order to actually deal with the crime in society, you have to be shown that no matter what your position is, whether it be so-called top of the society or not, if you break the law, if you get punished adequately, when you
Yeah.
the law, and that's what creates the culture of don't care about nothing.
But that's exactly the way to go against it. That's the way to fix what you're saying, Marcus. That's the antidote. Is
That's what I'm saying. To do a culture.
Do the inverse.
The top.
Yeah. To make what we do to people that have a joint, do that to people who call bank managers as prime minister to get their friend a favor.
And
a lot of corruption would stop quick if we took it seriously.
That we end that you would have the prime minister. No issue in that. He honestly thought he was just making a call as a friend, being the most powerful friend in the country. That speaks a lot to the type of work we would have to do if we were to start a new society, because we have to start from the ground up. We have to start from where the kids, the education levels, and bring people really into the new world. Now, this is the last point we can touch on. Should be our favorite topic. We touched on it a little bit earlier. How much freedom do you give religious people? Now, there will be, as speaking personally, there will be no censorship of religion in any form. Right?
No.
You're allowed to worship as you want, within bounds of reason, of course, and as long as you're not breaking any laws. So we know the religious institutions enjoy a lot of comfort and the prestige they have with their contact with the government and government officials, the freedoms that they enjoy, pretty much paying zero no taxes, unregulated. Anybody can throw a tent up on any corner.
Literally.
About 100 or so parishioners in a week. So how will you would you even regulate religion?
Of course, there are two sides to that.
We should at least, treat them like we treat other businesses. Pay taxes, have whatever regulation businesses have to follow. Make them do it. They can, you don't limit, how many churches or denominations or anything like that, but treat them like everybody else, and at least make some businesses.
And treat them like a business, but they should obtain a business license as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
They're going to do basically all the functions of a business. They're going to hire people. They're selling a product. They're going to have to incur legal expenses, legal processes. That's for formality's sake.
Yeah.
I think, and it would benefit the churches as well, because it would give them more legitimacy.
Right.
If anything, like right now, they're so unregulated that, to some detriment, people are losing. It's becoming so dispersed as all these denominations, because people are becoming sort of disenfranchised, in my view. But yeah, you would want to regulate and make sure that the right safety requirements are met, that they do pay taxes. They are part of society. I don't know why they act like they're some sort of exemption to society. They're a core part of society. They should also pay for the facilities that allow them to exist.
So Marcus, the day comes when you find that churches haven't been keeping up with their taxes, they don't have their business license renewed. Are you gonna be the one that's going there, put the yellow tape on the door?
Don't mess with the high sparrow.
Will you put a do not enter sign? Sure.
They big red X on the door.
Oh no, don't! I get a bunch of.
When we
What?
came,
And
yeah,
health and safety certifications as well, because for all the cookouts and the afternoon teas and all that
And
crap,
touching people and stuff, and
people need to be certified to prepare and serve food and health violations. They get posted. They cannot operate outside on a different system from everybody else.
basically, yeah, but no special privileges, no
None.
special reverence. Definitely can't be helping step up the policy in the capacity of the church. Um,
but that's interesting.
as individual citizens, like taxpayers paying citizens, they could, but not as the institution of the church. Like how they're trying to do on now, even though technically it's supposed to be a separation of church and state. You have people trying to not necessarily officially contest it, but you have churches putting their input, or people looking for church institutions to have their input on public policy, like what the Christian Council is saying with this. Who gives a shit? But then why should you have it? That's public policy.
But they're only able to make these sorts of decisions because they have the financial capacity to do it. I think the moment you start treating them like actual entities and bring them into the formal economy, what you can look at them as is as special interest groups in a very pure sense. What they're doing in lobbying is very economically inefficient. And if you regulate it as if you would regulate, I don't know, the Sunshine Boys, how they lobby, or how any other special interest group lobbies, and restrict the contributions, restrict and oversee and audit and make sure that it's public record, I think you would see a backtracking in influence, because you would start to expose a lot of dirty laundry, because you're going to have money laundering regulation attached to it. So where are these churches getting their money from? What is these donations? Give me some receipts. Once there's more transparency and oversight of the whole process, I think that the shadowy nature by which, of course, on the surface, it looks like a very cozy relationship between government and the church, but I think that there's a much more undercurrent thing going with respect to influence and money. And if we expose that and if we regulate that, then there's a much more level playing ground, and the more competition we see between churches and their influence, the less anyone will have.
Okay. We have another question on taxes. Her question is: the role of taxes in creating a new society. What level of income tax should be implemented to fund a new open society?
No income tax.
No income tax.
No, it's very inefficient. No, I'll say it from having studied a lot of public policy. The optimal tax system is one that follows the Ramsey rule. The Ramsey rule says you want to tax low and spread it across a lot of things. So if you tax income, you tax corporations, you tax payroll, these are big, concentrated taxes. So they are paid by a few people and are a heavy burden because they're implied to finance a lot of things. And these create consumption distortions. These create savings distortions. These create a lot of problems in the economy. The optimal situation would be a society that's actually only financed by a consumption tax. But you can make it progressive by having, this is where the welfare state comes in. This is where you have negative income tax come in. So if you, of course, the implied thing is that you have transparency on income. So you do have to, do a return, but it's not like you pay anything on it. It's just so that when you earn it below a certain amount, you get a return from the government to offset your particular income level having to pay a certain amount of consumption taxes. And that's how you make VAT or GAT or sales tax progressive, by making sure it's tied directly to a return. But don't tax people's income. It's very inefficient.
Gotcha. So, that's all the time we got for the day. I think we been in just a little over an hour. What I'd like to do is any last quick thoughts from each one of you on a topic or something else we might not have touched on, and then call it a day. Start with Marcus.
Yeah, but I was just saying that all this comes full circle because in order for anything to work, especially with, as we were talking about with the church, or any of these new attitudes, a lot of these problems come from currently people who have a reverence for people in higher power, or people who have a special reverence for the church or whatever. Yet. So, as we talked about in the beginning, the education we want to impart, like especially the young growing up, an idea of critical thinking, skepticism. No, I have no idea, or stuff like that. That would end up creating, a society where we want you to implement the subsequent ideas we're talking about, as far as the prison reform, criminal punishment, crime and punishment reform, how we treat religious institutions and stuff like that. Because as it is now, a lot of people will balk at that idea because they hold certain things as sacred. But if they grow up with the idea that nothing is especially sacred or immutable, it'll be easy to change. So that's the saying I say, the whole thing full circle.
Okay, Chandra.
Yeah, just sort of to echo what Marcus said, we sort of we are having this discussion, but whenever we can, we need to individually try and inject these new ideas, the daily conversations, and just sort of, I don't know, make people think like there needs to be some serious and dramatic change in our country on multiple levels, and it's not going to be, at least the way I see it now, it's not going to come from the top. So I think if we sort of slowly start to change the way we think and the way people around us think, and at least accept the idea that things need to sort of be radically changed, people can at least become more comfortable with that idea, and at least start to discuss realistically the changes that need to be made, or the problems that we're currently facing.
All right, Anik.
I'll take a different take on it. I'm going to take it from the perspective of translating solutions. I think that a big problem is the fact that we have a lot of the solutions on the books and in paper and wherever other medium to solve a lot of these problems. The problem, I think, comes from translation. So there's a lot of jargon, it's a lot of complex language, it's a lot of sophisticated ideas that are just difficult to digest and to see how they would play out in actual life. And I think, for my own responsibility and others who are informed, we should continue to try and translate these complex ideas into practical daily translations of how they should apply and how they could work. And then I think people will not just be informed, but also might be confident enough to start demanding it from their politicians and start to use it in their own daily language, rather than just leaving it over to like the superstitious, mystical world of public policy people. So, yeah, that's my take. More democracy of language.
Great. Thank you guys for times of the busy Sunday schedules. I don't know what y'all do on Sunday. The only thing I do is pick my nose and watch TV. So I will say this though, at the start of my new world, first set of people I'm going to get rid of is bus drivers. I hate those fuckers.
But is this a system of the bus? Or it's not really their fault getting the quota. That's what really caused it. Getting the whole system.
This badly designed bus system.
We're going to wrap this up right now. I want to thank Anthony, Chandra, and Marcus for coming in today, sharing some ideas on a topic that's really, you could be on it all day, pretty much. Because there's so much to touch on. There's a lot of back and forth ideas passing between many people, just even a handful of people, on seeing the subject on many different ways. And hopefully our next topical something that we could constrain a little bit more. And but it's been great. And thanks to everyone that took the time to ask questions, to sit in live on this, and to help contribute to the Bahamas Free Thinkers Hangout. We'll hang out today. Thanks for joining, and we'll see y'all next time.
All right. Yeah, good side.
It was cool.